Hey everyone, I might return to Genesis without finishing the Enuma Elish. I want to talk about that for a little bit. My name is Dan Paulson. Welcome to the video. I started doing a read-through on it as a monomyth and to describe how it works. And the first video for my channel, which is a very dead channel, I got over 1,000 views on it. But I was doing the comparison, really how to hook into it mentally and in the layers in that video, because monomyth, what is it? How does it work? You have to figure, you got to set that up first. You don't just read the story and go, there you go. It's actually doing something that is on a human life template. So that's the part that I'm trying to explain. That's the secret part. If you don't know that part, it's just a story. If you know that part, you realize that it's a story that's an adventure that you can take in your imagination. It's a story that is based on the sequences of a human life. And what's happening back then is that, well, for the Enuma Elish, it's clay tablets. You memorize it. They're probably acting these out on stage. We do know that the Greeks were doing that. By then they've got scrolls and other whatever conveyance they have, books. I'm not sure all, but there's a point where we know there's big stadiums and auditoriums. This is their entertainment. Their society is getting bigger. Look at what we do now. We go home and we watch our media. Back then you wouldn't have media. The media would be these movies, not the movies, but the monomyths would be acted out on stage. It could take hours. If it was something like the Iliad or Odyssey, it might even take like multiple days, come over several days to get the entire story out. They were that big and that rich and that thick. They're really just steps along the way of a human life cycle. However, it takes a long time to play them out. And today people are like, man, I don't have that kind of time. Can you just get to the point or something? That's why they've been lost. I can even go to channels where people are teaching mythology that don't see the template, that don't realize that there's a monomyth in there, that don't know the conceptual reading. And I tell people that the conceptual reading is like, well, crossing the Red Sea and barely making it through is not the same thing as sailing through the clashing rocks and barely making it through. One of them is the Red Sea. One of them is clashing rocks. They're not the same story. But if you look at them conceptually and don't treat them as historical, what you understand is that they're both crossing a threshold. Those are the nested things that people cannot see or don't want to. And I'll say if we get downstream someplace where we hear many called, few are chosen, not many people are going to take this path is really what that's about. That was known early on. They might act out an entire scene where there's this destruction that's going to happen and all the firstborn babies are going to be killed. And so one named Moses is taken out and put into a basket and put into the river and saved out. What this is really, that's exactly it. Not many people are going to do it. This is an isolation process right here, held in a story it's got different impact in the population. It's going to carry, but it still is on that template. It's framed on something that is common. These can take on more detail within there, the layering and the way that it's done, the firstborn, only the firstborn. The reason being, honestly, if you look at your own life experience, your first self was your pure self. That's who you want to get back to. That's who saved out. So there's more in these stories than meets the eye. Okay, well, I had been working in Genesis, but frankly, I get bogged down in it. It's so big and so thick. There's so much going on that it takes me a while to unwrap it. There's times I go at it for a while and I start making errors, but that's how you learn. You have to just keep going at it, and it unfolds as you learn what's going on. You can't just look at it from a distance and shrug and walk away. There's something there, and I just happen to be interested in it. So, but it's so thick, of course, there's really not much interest there. A little bit here and there, some comments, but I thought, you know what, people, Genesis is a huge version of something that, of the Enuma Elish. It is a huge version of that with some addition to it. The Enuma Elish is one creation myth and one self-healing path. Genesis is one creation and then multiple healing paths, plus a couple of other things going on. The Babel story, as they try to separate from here. Meanwhile, they're structuring Genesis on the same Enuma Elish. Adam named her Eve because she was the mother of all. It was then that the first being Apsu, who was their source, and the progenitor Tiamat, the mother, who gave birth to all. Eve gave birth to all. Tiamat gives birth to all. Ea, God. He gets put away. He disappears. He returns later, but at first he's gone. What happens when we go to Genesis? God kind of disappears after Cain and Abel, and then at some point men begin to invoke the word of God, and then God comes back and destroys everything. Where was God for that time frame? God, what about when God, here's where it starts over again. You go down to after the Tower of Babel story, chapter 12, I believe it is, the Abram and Sarai. And God puts them into land of Canaan where there's a famine and doesn't come back again and start sending plagues to Pharaoh until after the deed's been done. Where is God? Where is Ea? Where is God during these time frames? Those are the conceptual things we're looking for. Do the stories sound the same? Nope. You got to read between the lines. If you can follow that, understand that every word from every story has to be treated that way. So the conceptual reading is the really difficult part. When people can't do it, it seems very foreign. You have to make your own mind do that. The Tao that can be told is not the eternal Tao. That is because you can listen to me say this and it won't make sense. It wouldn't have made to me I might look at it with some interest at some point in time, but if you don't do it in your own head, you can't read it and you can't follow the path. So not many people are going to do it. And the stories, again, they're very long. And at some point I feel like, whew, you know what, I'm putting a lot into this. And it almost sometimes it seems like I'm looking at an empty audience out there. You know, it's like, whew, I don't know if I'm doing the right thing. I think that I think what I should do is not worry about subscriber count at all and just go work on Genesis and not even just use it as a collection place for my research. I need to make the videos in order to learn. I know that there will be interest in it. There will be a reason for this to be exposed at some point. It's probably meant to not be. And, but I think it is also, this structure is so there that when you see it, it's kind of in your face. Like I said, when I get back into Genesis, if anybody falls, it's like, well, once you see it, you can't unsee it. The problem is we can't see it because we don't have the stories deep memorized. And what do I mean by that? Deep memorized. You memorize something. Twinkle, twinkle, little star, how I wonder what you are. Up above the world so high, like a diamond in the sky. Twinkle, twinkle, little star, how I wonder what you are. I got that memorized. I don't need it any deeper than that. What does that mean? How many times was twinkle said? Oh. How about star? How about little? And that is what they're doing in Genesis, except that it's a huge story. And you learn that, well, Noah's name was said 41 times. Sarai's name was said exactly 17 times. There's a 3-7 numbering grid and some patterning going on that at some point when you analyze it enough, you begin to see that there's kind of like the system of numbering in the background where they all connect together, they link up. And that's something you would only know if you had them deep memorized. You would not only have the Genesis memorized, but know how many times the nouns and the verbs have been repeated. It's that thick. I can't do it except that I use the computer. So that's how it emerges. So people listening would just think, well, what a nut. I don't know what he's talking about. You would either have to be able to pull this up in your own mind or look at the computer and analyze what they're doing, which is what I'm doing. I can't pull these up in my mind. I do not have it memorized, but I see that if I did, and if I had it deep memorized, I wouldn't be using the computer. And back then that would have been a common thing. Today we look at it and go, I just read it from the Bible. Yeah, you cannot deep memorize it ever. If you're reading it, you have to have it memorized, and then you have to have it deep memorized. Okay. That's why this becomes so difficult and so personal. And, but at least in Genesis, I can pull up a search window on the computer, on the monitor, and show here's how many times this name appears. Here's how many. We can begin to see the patterns using the computer and just plotting it out. And at some point, what they're doing unfolds. And you know what? It isn't that complicated because it should bonk us in the head when you see like somebody that's 940 or 840 or something like that, and you see that 40 appear 740 times in the flood, 40 collected down in the Sodom story right after righteous was repeated exactly 7 times. And then if I go up here and look, I see that 800 and 900 both were repeated exactly 7 times, that they're simply using those as coded weight pieces. We're not going to send a 7 out and grab numbers, but that 40, we want that to be a part of the process. The 12s, the 10, 20, 30, all those, 5, you keep looking at those numbers and you'll see that what they're doing. You start counting them out and putting a grid together and you go, that's what they're doing. And the names that appear with it are being repeated the right amount of times, 5 times or 7 times or 3 times exactly. It's tight. It, however, is conceptual, but it's maintained throughout Abraham. It's hard to see it in these stories. If I'm describing a 7-3 male, female, that's pure self in the beginning, if we're going to interpret that way. If I went to the story of Job right up front, he has 7 sons and 3 daughters. The 7 and 3, the male and the female, not looking exactly alike, but the numbers are what's holding the code right there. That's our pure self. I don't want to go on about that too much in this video, but in order for Genesis to continue a repeat of that myth, they're doing it in a way that it doesn't look visible. They're doing it in a repeating numbering system. And that's why that's being developed. And then when you have something said 7 times, that's a good thing because that was part of the 3-7 grid, which starts where? At the 7th day when God rested. What they're doing is hiding the code in by repeating words. So 7 was said 3 times at the same time Adam and Eve were naked, unashamed in the Garden of Eden. Those parallel with each other. That's a 7 point right there. It's a pure starting point. First sin is 8. Then as you start going through, we find things like that. Something that is said 7 times is a good thing. You go to Sodom and the Sodom story, and you find out in there it's repeated exactly 8 times. So not only do we know Sodom is bad, but they're by repeating it exactly 8 times, they're keeping it on a sequence template that tells us whether it's good or bad by if you knew what the numbers were. Naked, by using that process, when Noah was naked after the flood, that was a good thing. He was spiritually uncovered. He wasn't naked in his tent. He was spiritually uncovered within his own self. The being drunk off of your wine from your vineyard because you were a husbandman represents the idea that on the other side of this purging, you have a new life and a new feeling. And what covered him up was his next shame. This is where the repeats are going to begin. But I don't think that the Enuma Elish is getting us there. So Genesis is a big version. And I thought that going to the Enuma Elish would help, but I think that the interest has dropped off so much there that I should not even worry about gathering people. I should just go do what I'm doing, count numbers and make videos on that. And that's probably what I'll do. I think that all the things that are out there, all the other subjects I touch on, there is one truth, there's one reality, and people are all over it doing things thinking that they've got the right way. But they're saying sometimes things that are just silly. Even if it's working for them, it's just goofy stuff. The whole pineal gland opening and all of that. I mean, there's a belief in it and there's a functionality to it and people are focused on it, but it's not, that just sounds uneducated, pineal gland. But you know what? It's a big popular thing out there. So, and people will swear by it. And it's like, okay, well, I get that it does work. And it should people want to be happy. They don't want to know a lot of facts and things like that. So I'm the one that analyzes it and realizes, we don't have to all exist in conflict. There's one thing that we all share here. If we could understand that, and everybody doing their separate things are off doing their separate things. So, and you see that those are big popular groups. Humans are tribal, and there are people that are not. They kind of stand off. You still see that happening. I see big tribes out there with me and people like us standing back, not getting involved in the tribes. I would have to call that an analogous term on my behalf. Maybe a better term to use today would be communities. But I think that what I'm doing, I think that if I'm going to accomplish anything positive for long term, the best thing I could do would be to continue my work in Genesis, honestly. The Enuma Elish, oh well. If you want to learn to read it, learn to read it. Video 1 should teach you. There's stuff out there, people that want it. There's enough information. If I can find it, you can find it. It's available through research and a lot of research. It's not available in a college degree. It's not. Yeah, there's one kind of core thing, but you're supposed to keep it quiet. Except for right now, something has gone very drastically wrong with one of them that comes from Genesis. If not the whole mindset there's a problem with the kind of respect that we're going to have to planet Earth, Mother Earth, and a belief system that includes the idea that this is temporary anyway. Yeah, what about the rest of us? What about the future people that are going to have to pay the price for that kind of cavalier thinking now? Yeah, I think I should just work in Genesis probably. See what's there. Try to find out and analyze it. It's complicated. It's thick. It makes my brain hurt. Sometimes I don't know what to call it. You feel like mushhead, and I have to just leave it for a while. And things, it's like you've got questions and neural pathways are growing, and you just have to stop and wait and let things catch up or something. Then you come back a few days later, and you're like, oh, okay, I got it. But at the end of the day, to get to this level, everybody has to do that on their own, and I just don't think there's time anymore. And there's ways of feeling good and giving people a meaning and a purpose in life that should just be left intact as long as it's not hurting people. The people that believe that the pineal gland is there, what is that hurting anybody? I mean, it speaks to the educational level and the desire for belief in something so significant that you have to place it somewhere. You need a focal point in order for this belief to work. People can't imagine that it's them that's doing it. And that what is really there is the bundle of memories that you need to purge. And that when you feel good, that's a natural feeling that you would feel if you could purge that stuff. You don't have to meditate on working around it. So anyway, but people like that, and it works. And you know what? There are also people who they would say that I don't have anything in there. There's going to be a lot of people who really, they're living through their consciousness, but everything is okay. And then they learn to live through their higher awareness. And they go, oh my gosh, I feel this. And they'll call that Kundalini energy, when it's not. It's them. It is their natural state that's now existing outside of the idea that I'm physically attached to things. I'm now above looking at things from a detached perspective. And that feels wonderful. And that's what they're calling Kundalini, and they're saying that the pineal gland is open. And if they had nothing there and it's open and they feel wonderful because they're living from their higher awareness, that's what's really happening. Call it what you want. Groups like that are big and popular. To me, though, I get the same impact out of there as talking to, say, a large religious group with conviction or something like that. Everybody tells you with conviction what their story is and can't figure out why you won't get on board with it. While you're listening to everybody and realizing what you're hearing is hundreds or how many people you want to listen to, thousands of anecdotal stories. I feel this, so that happened. I feel this, so that happened. And you can say, well, perhaps, but, examine it deeply. Honestly, when you look around enough, you realize that same opening, that same energy can happen for various reasons and various beliefs, that there's something different going on. But you know what? Why bother if you're happy? And sometimes the simple way that makes you happy is fine. But if you went to Jesus material and cleaned out the mote from your eye, you would get to the same place. You would find a commonality there that is something that is different than what each one of them thinks. There's something very specific, and all of it is mental. Jesus's mote, when you look at and think about it, is the judgment with which you judged others. You're living through that. All of it is going to get to the same place. Let go of your memories, the way you're holding them, the derogatory ones. Try to find a way to release yourself from them, because the energy that you give them in your feelings and your emotions is the energy they continue to reside at and continues to affect you in that way. So the understanding then becomes that the forgiveness has to happen for your sake, not for their sake. Part of the material talks about these things growing and getting bigger and bigger. And the reason is because we look at them constantly, or when we look at them and think of them, we continue to give them strength. It's like every time you think of it with the same kind of emotion that you feel from it, you're continuing to, it's like you're fertilizing it with the same stuff it's made out of. So that's why they get bigger. That is an incredibly important thing to understand and a step to take, to stop feeding them the way you feed them. That doesn't mean that they just dissipate, though. And the forgiveness isn't about forgiving them. The forgiveness is about, people say forgive yourself. What does that mean? Very interactive. You got a memory and you got a way you feel about it. Go bring that memory up. How does it make you feel? Find a way to change that feeling. That changes the memory. That's how you do it. That's why it's hard. You have to find a way to make it, you have to find a way to detach from that. And I would say, as far as the monomyth, and not to worry about it, if you want to and you're interested in it, go for it. But what I just told you right there, if you followed a monomyth, that's what it is going to lead to. Turning inward to the memories, resolving the enemy within, and then returning to life and experiencing the changes that happen as a result of it. And that not many people are going to do it. You know what? That's all you need to know right there. The monomyth is just a huge, antique, entertaining way of putting that template out, at the same time putting it on a story that's just a wonderful adventure. Or it depends on the genre. Bear in mind, many people will never have to go to that level. They won't have to do that. Many people will never have to do that. It's available. Also, many people that should do that never will. Not many people that have to do it are going to do it. And I need to just focus on that. I think teaching those other things is not, or trying to, my method is not popular at all. So why even bother? The best thing I think I can do is to keep working at Genesis. I'm not making an impact in any other way. I'm not even making an impact there. So I realize what I'm doing is very unique, and I'm just going to keep doing it. It's fun, so I'll keep doing it with Genesis. That's probably what I should focus on. I think that I get caught between trying to have people understand and what I'm doing at the same time, trying to figure out what's ahead of me still that I can't quite figure out. And I need to just focus ahead. I do. I need to not worry about anything except for what is this Genesis stuff here. Yeah, that figuring that out would be that'd be fun. It's a fun puzzle. At the same time, without all of that Genesis numbering grid, there's a simpler process going on at a different level where you don't have to worry about all that numbering, where you just know that you are a part of that story. You know that it is my life that has gone bad, and that if I'm the person that wants to turn inward, that this is what I must do. I must gather up these things and I must cross the threshold. It's kind of an instruction of how to take that path of self-healing. And I will tell you that when you're looking at the template as the creator comes and goes, or starts things off and then disappears and then returns later, here's what's going to happen on the template. We emerge from a higher realm, a higher place, and we have a higher awareness. However, we don't live through that. We start learning about life, and we live through our life's experience, our memories. And during that time frame, we've lost the connection with the higher awareness. When the higher awareness returns is when it's time to come back and say, okay, I got it. I'm living through my memories. It's time for me to come back in, or it's time for the consciousness to re-engage the higher awareness. So the moment the healing template begins is the same place where in religious material, in creation material, where the creator returns. But if you know that that's what you have to do, don't worry about the story. You can put that out in society today. I mean, we're recording it. That would have had to travel word of mouth before. Who would pass it along? Certain things about turning inward and healing and forgiving who hurt you would not be passed along. So you put it in stories that'll get passed along no matter what. But you have to know how to interpret it, how to put yourself into it. All those commonalities that we see from antiquity, this is why. One template. Genesis has all that there. You don't have to know the numbering, but the numbering shows something different. It's a different layer. So, and I think it's been lost due to writing and people thinking that they know what's going on. There's mystery in these pages that today people don't even look at. Well, anyway, I've got them pegged as a really antique, very old analogous ways that are hard to understand of carrying a self-healing journey. And it's hard to hook oneself into the story, but once you play it out enough and understand the hierarchy and you continue to use it with consistency, it comes online. But it takes so long to do that. It takes a lot of mental time practicing that in your own mind. What Einstein would have called thought experiment. What you're taking these things and placing them and wondering what they are. Eventually you realize all the parts in the story are you sliced up over time and various parts of you. The higher awareness, the things that emerge from there, the consciousness that controls everything without knowing it, either unaware of it or aware of it. And irresponsible or responsible. The inner being corrupted by everything that the consciousness does, the flow in life happening as a result of that, and all of that being called a third eye that needs to be resolved in order to change this flow and to change one's life, we are flowing in a collective that way, so it does work that way. When you change your life and the way you feel, it changes the way your future experiences are as a result. Period. That's bingo. You want to know what it's teaching? Right there. How hard is it? We just don't have the courage to get over our fears. You know what? I talk too much. I keep drifting back into interacting with the material. And there's a lot of good teachers out there. What I need to do is just get on to, the Genesis stuff. I got something unique going on there. All right. Take care. See you in that video.